If there's one thing Athlone is not short of, it's historical buildings. Athlone resident Pádraig McGrath spoke with Canon Devine about the marvellous St Peter and Paul's Church.
And of course he looked up his history and saw that in 1150 Thurlock O'Connor, High King of Ireland, donated all those lands around the church and where the army barracks are built now for the Cluniac monks who built their friary here. Of course that was confiscated after the penal laws, and the British built the barracks here on the site that we're standing on now.
So okay, he had a site then, but how big an ordeal was it then to start building the church, planning, collecting money and all the rest of it? How big an ordeal was that?
And initially it was planned to build this in the Gothic style of architecture, but he eventually settled on the Romanesque style, which you have here, and this is kind of a miniature of what you would have in Rome. Probably St. Peter's in Rome, or a combination of churches you would have in Rome. So he travelled extensively. He studied hard and studied his architecture, and he came up with this.
Just looking back to 1937, early 30s, and looking at today, does this church represent good value for money? Does it represent good value for the parish? Does it represent good value for the church, for the Catholic Church itself today?
Well, of course, in 1932 there were a big population and you had huge congregations at Mass.
Yeah.
I'm told that there was one stage for the 12 o'clock Mass here, you had to be in your seat by 11:45 or you wouldn't get a seat. Nowadays it's much different. But there was a big population, and I suppose it answered the needs of the time. Whether you wouldn't undertake a church like this nowadays. It costs about 12 million. There's no way you would undertake the building of such an enormous church. But it's still, yes, the people of Athlone, it's not just for St Peter and Paul's parish, the people of Athlone are proud of this church. It's an iconic building.
Pádraig, St Peter and Paul's Church is a very prominent building here in Athlone, but what's so special about it?
There are lots of things so special about it, really, when you look at it. It has wonderful artworks, I think, for a start. I'm no expert on art, but to me, there's wonderful art here. You have wonderful Connemara columns here, which we'll look at in a moment. But come over here for a minute and we'll have a look at the what they call the Pieta, and it's Our Lady there holding Our Lord. And Our Lord is a fully grown man, but here's Our Lady holding him, and yet the sculptor was able to get the whole thing into scale, which is most unusual, to be able to get a lady holding a grown man in her arms like that. And to your right here, Sarah, we have Moses sitting on a column or something there, and that's significant in itself. He was a great man in the Bible and carried a lot of stories. And another feature of this magnificent church, Sarah, is it has 4 side altars as well as the high altar. We'll have a look at one of them now. And here in front of us, Sarah, we have a lovely side altar, and many's the church that would be delighted to have this as a main altar, but here in St Peter and Paul's in Athlone, it's a side altar dedicated to Our Lady, and she's there holding the infant child in her arms. And it's a wonderful piece of art, as well as being a little shrine of dedication to Our Lady. And the main altar, Sarah, now is just over here, a most magnificent piece of work ever. When you look at it, you see all the Italian marble around it, the columns, the tiles, the altar itself, most magnificent. A small dome there over the altar, leading up into the roof of the church, and a most magnificent piece of work ever. All this came from Italy, as I said, and it would have been put together here at the time.
Pádraig, for me, one of the main things that stood out for me was the stained glass. It's absolutely amazing and it really stands out in this church. Can you tell me about that?
Definitely the stained glass is an outstanding feature in this place, and we'll just have a look at this window here. This is one by Harry Clark, and this church can boast having 13 Harry Clark windows in it. They were done by the Harry Clark Studios in Dublin, and of course they are renowned all over the country for the stained glass. The amount of detail you see in those windows is astounding. When you look at it, you have to study it hard to see what's going on. But all this was designed by Canon Crowe at the time, believe it or not, down to the last detail. And those windows represent what he exactly wanted in them. And they're all telling different biblical stories to us. You could study the Bible almost from looking at the windows themselves.
Well, thank you very much, Pádraig, for the tour of St Peter and Paul's Church. It was brilliant.
Tá fáilte rót.
The church is located right across from Athlone Castle and is open for visitors all year round. Mass times are posted outside the church.